And then all of a sudden, a craft, an object goes whizzing right by the cockpit. And I mean, probably like 15 feet away.
So this is the beginning of your journey towards this sort of bizarre subject of whatever these things are.
Yeah.
So you don't have any real previous interest. He says this to you, and then what's the steps after that? Like, how do you get introduced to this idea that these things are alien crafts?
Yeah. So, great question. So for some people, there's kind of two ways people process this information, at least in my experience. And there may be others. This has just been my observation. Some people have this kind of revelatory moment, this epiphany where it's this aha moment where, oh my gosh, this is real, right? Mm-hmm. For other people, it's kind of more of a slow, gradual realization. And I think for me, I was probably in the second category, more of a slow, gradual realization that this isn't, a cover for something else. This is really about UFOs.
So how do you first get introduced to these things?
Well, I didn't get introduced to these things. It was, first of all, I was introduced to the reporting, right? So there was these official reports that we were getting from the field. There's official videos and whatnot that describe vehicles doing things, maneuvering in ways that frankly outperform anything we have in our inventory. Now, keep in mind, my background was at some point in aerospace. So I knew all the capabilities of an F-16 or, for example, an F-22 or the F-35. And at the end of the day, as advanced as they are, they're still conventional aircraft. They still have the old, there's an adage they use for jet engines. It may seem a little awkward here, but it's suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. That's what a jet engine does. Forgive me, that's what it does.
Right.
And so it's a conventional type engine. Of course, you have a propeller too that can displace air and whatnot. These vehicles were different. These vehicles, for the most part, didn't have any type of associated characteristic that you or I or any normal person would associate with the plane, with an airplane, an aircraft, right? And yet it's flying. So how does an airplane work? Well, let's say this cigar, for example, is an airplane, and there's four fundamental forces. And so you have thrust, lift, drag, and weight. And if you understand those, you can build wings and you create lift and you can fly. And then you have to have an engine for that thrust and whatnot. The things that our military pilots were encountering didn't have that. They didn't have wings. They didn't have rudders and ailerons and control surfaces. They didn't have cockpits. They didn't have engine, no obvious signs of propulsion. They were doing things and maneuvering in ways that, frankly, defied anything that we had in our inventory, and we were pretty certain the enemies didn't have either. Our adversary didn't have these technologies either. And even more perplexing is that they were being encountered over controlled U.S. airspace and over sensitive military installations. So, from that perspective, you've got a real national security concern on your hands.
So you said video.
Mm-hmm.
What was do you remember the first thing that you saw?
Boy, there's so many. I think part of the challenge is that most people here in this country, they're familiar with the three videos, right, that have been famously released by the Pentagon.
The Go Fast,
Gimbal, FLIR, correct.
Right.
But those are the least compelling of all the videos that the government has. Those were unclassified, and so those were kind of the low-hanging fruit that could be released to the general public. There's stuff out there that's like 4K ultra high definition, right? So when you see something like that from a certain military platform or a certain military equity or an intelligence collection platform, you have to look at that and say, well, what is that? What the hell is that? And more importantly, that data is being backed up by radar data, right? So you've got electro-optical data like gun camera footage or pod or FLIR video, and then you've got radar data that is actually confirming what the video is picking up, and then you've got eyewitnesses that are also watching it, right? So you've got trained observers, pilots that can recognize the silhouette between an Su-22 and a MiG-25 from 20 miles away and make a split-second decision: is it friend or foe? Do I kill it or do I let it live? And they're reporting it. So you have now three separate, if you will, collection platforms. The human eye being one of them. You've got gun camera footage and you've got radar footage, all describing the same event at the same place at the same time, under the same circumstances, right? And so keep in mind, with my background as a former special agent in counterintelligence, if this was in front of a jury, as I've said before, I think we're well beyond reasonable doubt. That is something there. I mean, that is real. That's not an atmospheric aberration. It's not a anomaly. That is something there. It's tangible.
So was there an aha moment for you? Like the first thing that you saw that you looked at and you go, what the fuck?
No, like I said, for me, it was more slow and gradual. What
was the first thing that you saw that made you realize that there's something going on here that defies conventional wisdom or conventional understanding of propulsion systems?
I think for me, one of the most compelling moments was when I attended. Boy, let me go back into memory banks. I attended a dinner with some individuals who were already associated with the larger umbrella program called OSAP. And I attended dinner at a Washington, D.C. hotel, and a Brazilian general attended this dinner. And the dinner was sponsored by a gentleman named Robert Bigelow, the famous billionaire hotelier.
Yeah, I've met him.
Yeah.
Had him on the podcast.
Yeah, and by the way, he's an American hero. He's a patriot. He's funded
Brilliant
a lot.
guy.
He is brilliant, and people don't realize that he self-funded a lot of this stuff on behalf of the U.S. government by himself. Like he paid it to do it himself. He really is an American patriot in my opinion. But anyways, he flew in this guy named General Uchoa. General Uchoa was a Brazilian general, very, very senior in the Brazilian government, who led an investigation about an event that occurred over several days.
Is this the Varginha incident?
No, it's actually called Colares.
Another one.
In Brazil, yeah. And the Colares incident. And they had an overwhelming number of eyewitnesses, and there was even some video and photographs that they had produced internally there to Brazil. And it was overwhelming, the evidence. And for me, it was more listening to him and explain the concern they had and some of the interactions the Brazilian government officials had with these UAP that really I left there that dinner scratching my head and really at that point beginning to absorb the profoundness that we're dealing with something that like is real. This is not a cover plan for some other technology we're trying to protect.
Did he show you this video evidence?
So I was sitting at the kind of like a table like this. There was a whole lot of people at the table. He was sitting at the head. I was kind of way down over here, and he brought a manila envelope and he was showing photographs to everybody, right? And some reporting as well. I think he brought, if I recall correctly, his daughter to translate because I don't think English was his very good. It wasn't his language. But for me, that was, and I think for one of my colleagues too, which I probably can't say his name right now because he hasn't come out publicly yet, but we both left that dinner, I think, scratching our heads and saying, wow, this is legit. This is real. The U.S. government is interested in this, and there is interest by our government. As after that dinner, attending more meetings and beginning to read the reports, the field reports, and speaking to the scientists, it became evident to me that this was a very serious issue. We had near misses over some of our areas of operation. In some cases, literally these UAP splitting a combat formation. Now, if you know how planes fly, they fly very close in combat situation. These things were splitting the formation, right? That there were reports being provided through the Air Force, mostly through the Navy, about air safety issues. Where pilots literally could run into these things, right? They were pervasive. It wasn't like a onesie and twosie.
Was there ever an incident where a pilot or a jet did run into something?
Not that I'm aware of. What I can tell you that there has been incidents where there appears to be some sort of provocation, where one of these things seems to be coming deliberately close to an aircraft, not necessarily trying to hit it, but maybe trying to demonstrate performance capabilities. There was one video in particular. Haven't been cleared by the Pentagon, so let me see if I can speak about it in general terms. There's a pilot flying, and you can hear on the radio this chatter back and forth. Do you see it? Do you have eyes down on it? Pilot, nope, negative, no eyes down. Okay, you should have it on radar. Yeah, I got something on radar, but no eyes, no, I can't see it. And then all of a sudden, a craft, an object goes whizzing right by the cockpit, and I mean probably like 15 feet away. And you can hear the pilot, the expletives of the pilot,